All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Pillar 5 Advisory Committee meeting today. It's surrounding blueprint communication with families. Thank you, everyone, for being here again. Hope everyone has a good start to the school year, regardless of what role you may be in. Let's see, just to ground ourselves again in the mission, as we always do, beginning of every meeting, you can just take a moment to read the slides here. All right. Sounds good. I'm going to kick it off next to Rachel for the next portion of our agenda here.
Great, thank you. And Arshia, are you able to share the slides? We never talked about who was doing that. We have
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay, we have some slides to share to kind of frame the opening part of our conversation and to give some background about communications and a little bit of the evolution of communications through the AIB's kind of startup phase to where we are now, and then also to give you some background on different components of required elements of communication, both for the AIB and for the LEAs broadly, because those are the folks that are most commonly communicating with our families. So we're again not going to read every slide for you, but these slides will be made available through the meeting materials link on the website. And basically, what you can see here are some key points for the demand for communication. And when you have a priority as big as the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, it's pretty clear that there's just major need for robust communications to oversee all of the many components of the work. I highlighted a couple of ideas here that the goal of these communications would be to provide some clarity amidst all of the complexity. There's a lot happening in Blueprint in all different areas, K-12 and post-secondary and workforce, that it's technical, it's long-term, there's many layers to this work. We also believe that in order to achieve Blueprint, we need to build trust, and we do that with transparency. We also look at two-way communication, that it's not just what we're putting out and what our partners are putting out, but it's hearing from people about how Blueprint implementation is going and what the needs are and what the successes and the challenges are. We heavily stress and prioritize equity and access, that it's not just about updates. It's not just about putting some messages out and hoping they land somewhere. It's working to strive to ensure that we're making things available to all of our communities, which may involve some translation opportunities or making things accessible to folks in a language that is not legislative and a little bit more plain language read of the complex work that's underway here. Another component of the communications efforts that we have to keep in mind is how many agencies are involved in implementing Blueprint. It is not just the AIB, MSDE, and the LEAs. There are so many partner agencies when you think about MHEC and Department of Labor with the CTE committee and all of the colleges and the community colleges and the workforce boards. There are many people, the private providers, the early childhood side of things. There are many people who own parts of Blueprint. So coordinating communications and making sure that everybody is having access to share what's happening in their world of Blueprint is also important. And so we also believe that the consistent, accurate communications across partners will reduce confusion in such a major transformation effort that we're undergoing here in Maryland. We can go to the next slide. Over the years, we have really talked about some goals here at the AIB that we have, and that's where possible. We don't always meet these, but we certainly strive for them to be proactive, transparent, and inclusive. and that the AIB represents the voice of the blueprint's intentions. What does that law mean? Why is it there? Why was it put there? What's the goal of it in the end? The progress we're making from the early days where we were just standing up agencies and sharing information and getting guidance out to now where we're into progress monitoring, but also elevating both the challenges and the successes so that we can collaborate across agencies and across Maryland to brainstorm implementation approaches and to overcome some of the challenges. We hope that our efforts strive to promote clarity, collaboration, and accountability, and that's focused on demonstrating progress towards the achieving our equitable, high-quality educational outcomes for all Maryland students. On the next slide, basically, this is an overview of the next coming slides to frame for you what's coming at you. In this deck, what we're going to be linking here are some basic documents that are available on our website if this is a topic you want to go deeper on. So we're going to be highlighting these communication resources and expectations that are available. The two we're really going to lean into right now in this deck are what's expected of the AIB and what's expected of LEAs. And we're going to show you some documents that show where they've outlined their priorities, their communication strategies, and their approaches by pillar. We are not going to be putting up tonight because the focus is more on families. We're not going to be pointing out the state agency plans, although they are available on our website as well. So just wanted to clarify that here, that there are more things available to share with you, but we're limiting our focus tonight to what is expected of the AIB and of our LEA partners. So in the next slide, we're going to dig into what the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan calls for when we think about communication. So we have this idea of annually disseminating information on best practices, programs, and resources to relevant agencies and host multiple efforts, including those open to the public, with a focus there on promoting the interagency efforts. So in this, when we think about this subtask, we accomplish this through many ways. There's a lot of work groups. There's a lot of meetings that occur to share information on specific topics. So it could be something on career ladders, could be something on career counseling. We do things like our annual report that we publish, kind of everything that the AIB has been doing. Those are available on our website historically from 2023, 2024, and we are beginning to work on the 2025 version now that will be due towards the end of the year. But those showcase all of the stakeholders that we've worked with and the work that has been accomplished in the preceding year. There are other things that are, some of these are to the public, but not all. You'll notice that it says including to the public. There are work groups that help figure out what's needed to move this work forward. And those kinds of things happen as kind of pop up when dual enrollment is a work group that we're leaning into right now. Teacher prep has been one that comes and goes. It starts, we accomplish one piece, and then we come back and pick it up with another piece. But there's a lot of information happening around blueprint implementation strategies, and we do try to get that information out in a variety of ways. Following this meeting, I can also share with you some other examples of those resources and some things that are to come in the next 2 years around different topics, with submissions that are due to us in December of this year and a document that we owe in January of the following year. So there are some more examples of this I can point to if you're interested in this topic. On the next slide, you will see that we are looking at how the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan outlines the expectations for communications for our LEA partners, for the local school districts, the local education agencies. And broadly, each year, in addition, each year beginning in 2023 and also in 2024, each LEA submitted their implementation plans to the AIB for approval. All of those are on our website and available for you to review if you're interested in any particular county or all of them and how they're doing this. In the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan, it outlined the expectations that they would describe their communication strategies by pillar and their efforts, what they thought they would approach, how they would approach communicating to their stakeholders, to their families, to their communities. So we have given you the links here, and these will be hyperlinked when we post this document up to the meeting materials on the slides, but they are available on our website. There was a template for each year that was given to each of the LEAs, and we also provide a link to that. And then there's submission folders for every LEA by year. And so you can click in, and if you just want to review the questions about communications approaches, you can find those in the plans. And I think we have an image of one of the questions, stakeholder engagement. This is not the only question. This is one example about stakeholder engagement as it related to Pillar 5 from the LEA Implementation Plan Development Guide. This was from the 2024 one. Again, you can also find similar questions that were asked in 2023. To help the LEAs know what we were looking for, because if you recall back in 2023 and 2024, submitting these plans and getting them approved was what triggered their release of funds for those years. So they had to be approvable. This is the criteria for success, which outlines the 5 elements that had to be demonstrated in their plan to meet the expectation for that particular question. So I know it's a little bit small just because there were a lot of words in those documents, but you'll have access to this document. You'll be able to blow that up bigger, and just know that all of our LEAs did meet ultimately these requirements so that their plans were approved in each of those 2 years. There is always a feedback process in getting those that we review them and give feedback and kind of work collaboratively to make sure that the answers do meet all of these. And by the end of each year, everybody's plan definitely did. And I would say stakeholder engagement is a top priority of the vast majority of the LEAs. They are doing excellent things to get the word out to their communities, to their parents, to their students about what Blueprint brings for their students and for their school system. We can go to the next slide. And I am excited to turn it over to our Outreach and Communications Director, Arshia Sethi Snowden, to share some additional work that we're doing as an agency regarding communications currently.
Yeah, so this is the part we're going to come to after.
Got it.
For the Toward Solutions discussion. So we'll talk more about what this looks like from the AIB side and our priorities, and also how these can be things that can be used by LEAs and families as well.
So Amy and Mr. Liu, any questions kind of on the history or the expectation? What's in law is basically translated in the BCP. The BCP stands to serve as that translation guide for the different laws, pulling it all together in one place. Any questions or anything I can share with you about the broad approaches, the things you saw in that deck, about the documents available on the website, about how LEAs are communicating with families?
I think at this time, we'd love to open it up to the committee and see if there are any burning questions as we kick off this meeting in regards to what Rachel has shared.
I think they're ready for the next piece.
So today we really wanted to center a couple of tension points, if you will, the need for communication and clarity and being up to date with the vast number of changes and the speed at which those changes take place. So we've invited a couple of guests to this particular meeting. Before we do that, we wanted to show what a couple of districts have done to share information with communities, with parents, with their schools, with their principals around the blueprint. After we do that, we're going to introduce our first guest, who is Ria Gupta from Strong Schools Maryland. Our second guest is Tom Dwyer from EdScale. And we've invited both of them, just given their role in the education space in Maryland, in providing communication tools to the community and to families, so that we can all elevate and examine some best practices as we move forward with Blueprint implementation. So at this time, I'd like to just elevate a couple of districts. Again, these are not, we're not saying that the districts we are not highlighting aren't doing great things, but just in the limited time that we had, we wanted to showcase a couple different options. So let me share my screen really quickly and I'll navigate to our first, which is Baltimore City. And Baltimore City does a couple different things to share their Blueprint information with families, communities, schools, the general public. One of those being a video series that they've put together. And these videos are honestly very comprehensive, very understandable. They're made for a lay audience, but they also took it a step further and have all of their information provided in English as well as Spanish. So we just wanted to highlight the work that Baltimore City is doing to share and showcase their information around the Blueprint and what that means to students across Baltimore City. I also want to share Frederick County. So Frederick County, and we had Dr. Sarah Sergo at our last meeting. Dr. Sarah Sergo is Chief of Staff and the Blueprint Coordinator for Frederick County, and also wanted to just highlight the nice coordination and alignment that Frederick County has done to align the Blueprint pillars with their strategic plan so that it's a coordinated effort, and the work that Frederick County is doing around improvement and to meet their strategic goals is clearly aligned to Blueprint goals and objectives and outcomes. Frederick County also does, if you go into the pillars, they also have these one-pagers that are very easy to understand, as well as a video series around the different initiatives per pillar. And it's interview style. So the folks that are within Frederick County leading this work are interviewed so that they can share in their own words what this work means for teachers and schools and students and families. Last but not least is Garrett County. So Garrett County, one of the things we wanted to highlight was just the easy access of the folks to contact if you had questions, concerns, looking for updates. They also have per pillar all of their presentations, their board meeting presentations. But the thing that we really wanted to share here was both the Blueprint coordinator, but also the staff that are leading each of the Blueprint pillars and their contact information. So all of it is very transparent. It's all on their website. And these are just a few ways that for parents and community members, we have an opportunity and an entry point to understanding more about the work of the Blueprint, what is happening, what that means for students, where that is leading, how decisions are made, etc. So with that, I'd like to, any questions or anything that you would like to share from your own LEAs or your own districts that you found to be helpful communication tools, ways in which to really distill the information that parents and families would need or would like to know, that you've seen be really helpful.
Amy, while the committee members process that, can I make one more? I just want to echo something that you said and put it like in bold 36 font, like so everybody hears loud and clear. All of the districts are doing great things. And you said it very, very clearly that you just chose to highlight a few, but all of our
Yes.
districts, we're educators and we
Yes.
like gold stars. We all like the gold star. So we will come back and look for other districts to do gold stars too as well. We're not saying, just like Amy said, that others aren't doing a great job. But thank you for highlighting and taking the time to review and see what's out there. And to all of our districts, many thanks for the work they're prioritizing in this.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you for that underline bold highlight.
Top.
Well, be chewing on some of those ideas. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to someone quite special on our committee who recently learned that he is a semifinalist for Teacher of the Year. Javon Liu, we would like to open the floor to you, our trusted steed in the classroom. So thank you, Javons, for all that you do in the classroom. And thank you too for bridging the next introduction of our guest.
No, thank you, Amy. Yeah, as Amy said, our first guest is going to be with Strong Schools Maryland. Before I pass the mic to Ria, I just want to read a quick bio about who she is, what she's about. So Ria, she is the executive director of Strong Schools Maryland. She recently earned her master's in public health from Johns Hopkins, where she focused on equity in Baltimore's 21st Century School Buildings program. Passionate about high quality, safe education for all students, Ria brings her background in public health, data, and her experiences in Baltimore City schools to drive accessible, equitable change. So welcome, Ria, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amy and Javons and all of the committee for being here. I'm gonna just share my screen and drop one thing in the chat. So let's do that and we'll get all set up for this presentation. But good evening, everyone. Pleasure to be with you. I just want to first thank you for inviting us to be here for this important conversation. My name is Ria Gupta. I am the executive director of Strong Schools Maryland. And I'm here today to talk and share communication strategies that school systems can adapt and engage communities authentically and truly, that make people and communities feel seen, heard, and invited into these really important conversations. Before we get into it, if you're not familiar with Strong Schools Maryland, hello. We are a statewide education advocacy organization invested in the full funding and faithful implementation of the blueprint. Before we get into the presentation, I want to give a huge shout out to my team, Kenzie Funk, our policy advocate, and Kalia Harris, our digital comms associate. Us three together make the magic that you're about to see on screen happen. So I just want to give a huge kudos to them. In short, before we get into the conversation, Strong Schools Maryland, together with communities, we advocate, build power, and share resources to bring people together to co-create strong public schools. And in the end, we do envision a Maryland that leads the nation in equitable student outcomes, equitable school funding, and empowered stakeholder engagement. So this is why community engagement is really important for our mission. I'm going to talk for like around 10 minutes, and then I know we have a lot of time for questions, so feel free to put them in the chat or as you think about them. I've also dropped a resource link in our chat to kind of walk through any links that I might be referencing, so just for ease of access. I want to ground us in what meaningful community engagement is before talking about our considerations, lessons learned, and examples. Most of you have probably seen a version of this cycle in some informal way or in another form. But when we talk about meaningful community engagement, it truly is a cycle, right? It's a practice and it requires intentionality. When we tackle this at Strong Schools, this cycle, we mainly do that in 3 buckets of engagement, which we're going to show examples of later. But the buckets are bidirectional information sharing, consultation and collaboration, and then capacity and power building. And all of these activities separately and together are how we build the cycle of meaningful engagement. They all fit in. And if we didn't complete one of these pieces or 2 of these pieces, it would be the community engagement we do would be wholly incomplete. And I just want to stress that. And you'll see the circles of work that we do and how they kind of intertwine in this presentation. And I apologize for the sniffling. I think I'm about to get sick. So, but first, I want to say that over the years, we have learned a lot about how to communicate with communities. And one thing that we've learned is how we communicate is just as important as what we communicate. So we kind of diluted some high-level considerations for developing a effective engagement strategy at the local school level. So I'm just going to walk us through these. First, one of the most basic things is knowing your audience. So every community member comes to the table with a different level of knowledge, experience, and time, perspective, all of that. Some are really familiar with education policy, while some are just trying to understand how decisions affect their child or their classroom. Some people have the time to sit through 2-hour meetings, while others have 5 minutes between jobs. If we don't account for those differences, we are going to lose people before they even have a chance to participate. That leads into our second consideration with it, which is accessibility and equity. It's simply not enough to send out one newsletter, host one meeting, and call it engagement. True accessibility means offering multiple ways in. We do that in written materials, visuals, video, oral updates, social media, in-person, virtual conversation. This also means making sure materials are available in the languages that your community speaks. If the community you work in speaks Spanish or another language, your material should also be available in that language. And also, events should be scheduled at times when families can actually attend. And that tends to be maybe outside typical traditional working hours. One thing that we really learned, the third consideration, is being honest and saying what you mean. We learned very quickly you can't sugarcoat or hide behind jargon. It truly erodes trust. When we are clear and transparent, even when the news is hard, and oftentimes the news is hard, it shows respect and builds that trust because people inherently just want the truth. This fourth piece is something that you'll see in all our materials that we send out is engagement must be actionable. Information without a next step is just kind of noise. People should never leave a meeting or a communication wondering like, so what? Or asking that question. They should know exactly what they can do, whether that's attending an event, completing a survey, speaking out and speaking at a hearing, or just like sharing information with a neighbor or a concerned community member. And then this last piece, the fifth consideration is something that we have all the time. No one is perfect. It's the idea of having a mindset of continuous improvement and learning. We have work to do because community engagement is an ongoing practice. And that can only happen if we keep listening, adjusting, and growing. And what that means is evaluating what works, owning what didn't, and being willing to try new approaches. This is super important. There are going to be mistakes in communication. What you do next is the most important. The process and considerations of engagement are inseparable from outcomes. When we really believe that when the process isn't equitable, our decisions won't be, and that's why like this work that you are doing at Pillar 5 in this committee is so important. Now let's get to the fun part. With the time that like I want to talk for the rest of the 5 minutes, I guess, that we have, with me talking is I want to talk through some examples of our engagement strategies. All of them again are linked in that document that I shared. And first is that bi-directional information sharing. For us, that means utilizing newsletters. That's both monthly newsletters, and then during the legislative session from January to April, that's weekly legislative newsletters, social media, one-pagers, and dashboards. So this is a snippet on the left is a snippet from one of our most recent newsletters. And in every newsletter, we aim to give like these 10-minute education updates with some of the largest education news from the month. And a lot of the news that we share can be dense. So what we do in these newsletters is aim to break it down in snippets that are digestible. So last month, the state board released MCAP results, and we wanted to share that with our communities. So in our process of sending out our newsletter, we broke down what the MCAP is, aka how communities and parents might see it show up in their students' schools. And then we talked about our major highlights and takeaways, and then some reminders about this data, because a lot of times when you kind of truncate large issues, you lose the nuance that is needed, right? MCAP is just one measure, right? Progress takes time. Those are things that ground people in the reality of this work and also ground expectations. We also always add like buttons. So we had people and we encourage people to look and explore the local level data, and also gave a heads up to expect student reports to be out on September 12th. So you can explore our newsletter on our website. We do send it out through email, which is the best format to get it, but it's always available on our website as well. This is just one snippet of how we kind of digest our and send education updates through our newsletter. Next thing I want to touch on is our social media, which has blown up in the last year because of the great work that Kalia does. This media source tends to be more on the go. This is the way that we share quick actions that are easily shareable. And we do aim to break things down in a way more simple format and provide the context that might be needed in links in our bio. So if someone wants to dig in deeper or take an action, that's all available in our bio. One thing that we've really recognized is social media is an incredibly fast way to get the word out. And it is not as time consuming as maybe building a newsletter. This is also one of the best ways to engage students. We have engaged students on social media more than on any other platform. So if you're looking to get feedback from students or get students to an event, putting it on social media and engaging also with their content is really imperative. And we can always look at social media and talk more about that in the question section. The next thing that we do in terms of information sharing is through one-pagers. That's one of our one-pagers is posted on the right side of the slide. And usually we make one-pagers that explain a single topic. And it can vary in the depth, but it always is grounded in the impacts on students. So this is, for example, one pager we made regarding the potential cuts to collaborative time. And this talked about the impacts on student, what it was, and like talked about key students impacted. We linked a few of our other ones on that key resources page. One thing I really want to talk about is something really exciting that was released this summer, and it's our recently released data dashboard. This data dashboard was actually the process of that community engagement and is a response to our network's hope for more transparency in Blueprint-related data. Our wonderful summer intern, Izzy, pulled together publicly available data and try to really give a snapshot of some of the intersectional data by pillar in the blueprint. And the beautiful thing about this dashboard, and I really urge you to click around and test it out, is that this isn't just data posted on a website. You can interact with it. There are definitions, there's the data sources, there's key takeaways, and even videos of Izzy walking you through how to use the dashboard and interpret the dashboard, right? It's the multi-level of engagement and information sharing that allows people, if they don't know how to read this, they can just look at the key takeaways and play around a little bit. Or if you really want to dig in, you can also dig in. These are the small but meaningful ways to move information sharing to that capacity building work that we hope to do. But as we talked about in the community engagement cycle, information sharing is just the start. So this is on the bottom of the slide, this is another form of that cycle that I shared. And if we look, information sharing is really only that second step of informing. So we really focus on these next three steps also. Engagement means collaboration and empowering, and we do a lot of this in different forms. We do, for example, monthly education calls with anybody in the community who's interested in sharing what they're seeing in their communities, and we share statewide updates and actions. We also host community conversations where we can get feedback actively throughout the year. We do workshops and skill building sessions, right? There's a lot of barriers to getting involved in this work, whether that be like testimony and public comment. We break down those barriers. And we also do a lot of youth leadership work. That's the base of a lot of the things that we do. We're doing this for students, so why not capacity build with students and help them build the skills that they need to advocate for themselves. So we do a lot of different forms of collaboration and empowering, but one thing that we've realized is like this is truly cyclical, because hearing the needs, experience, and perspectives straight from the communities during these sessions allows us to better refine our information sharing to support them. That's how like things like the data dashboard were created. And it allows us to be better receptive and more nimble on our feet throughout the year and really make sure that the things that we do are meaningful for the people that we serve. So I just want to close out and reiterate thank you for having us, and that if we want equity in student outcomes, we also have to start with equity in how we communicate. We are happy to support school systems to adapt our approaches in your own work. And I just want you to know that Strong Schools Maryland is here as a partner, and we're here to help. And thank you again for having us. And any questions are we're happy to answer.
Ria, thank you so much for sharing both the intention and the practices that you've engaged with, as well as the evolution of how those practices started. You've built trust with families around the blueprint, and I'm curious from your perspective, what's one lesson from your approach that LEAs can borrow right away? Like, what's something that they can go to your website, they can replicate? What would you recommend? And then I'm going to pass it to Dr. Prime, who also has a question.
That's a great question, Amy. And I wouldn't say they could grab this straight from our website, but it is a simple fact of listening. And I think both Rachel and Arshia mentioned this. When we are building relationships with communities, our first thing is not to talk about the blueprint. We don't talk about the blueprint. We don't go straight to the policy. We ask a grounding question. What do you expect from your schools? What are your hopes for your school? What are you experiencing in your schools? And we do that with students. We do this with parents. We do this with communities. it builds that trust, but it also helps us learn about the communities. Like what are you hoping for? Because then we can also point to the blueprint and say, this is what is going to support that, but also understand like where are the gaps? What do we need to advocate for beyond the blueprint? So I would say listening is just so key. And sometimes we get so wrapped up in like educating about the blueprint and all of that, that we need to just take a step back and say, what do you want? And how can we build from there? Super important.
Thank you for that perspective. Dr. Prime, you had a question? You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and for the really comprehensive approach that you're taking to communicating. My question is, what level of participation are you getting from parents in those feedback sessions? And have you noticed a particular profile of which parents are getting involved?
That's a really great question. And I want to mention that engagement really depends, and that's why we do so many different forms of engagement. So for example, for our community conversations, we've had around like a good 30 or so folks from across the state come to those conversations and be active participants. But when we follow up with the people who've registered, we end up getting a lot more maybe one-on-ones. We have a lot of parents who actually contact us one-on-one. Maybe they feel a little bit uncomfortable sharing their thoughts in a public setting. So we always make that option available for folks where they can talk about the issues that they're seeing in their school community privately with us. But then we see things like our survey. We released a survey in the beginning of the summer, and that got around like 450 responses. And I can pull up the breakdown, but I do know a large majority were family and parents. So there are a lot of parents that want to get engaged, and the good thing that we've been seeing is there is huge diversity in why the parent is engaged and also where they are in the state. We have had state parents from all the way from Western to Eastern to Southern to the Capital Region. It's incredible to see all these parents come together and talk about the issues that they're seeing in their communities and how it relates back to the state level.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Lou.
Yeah, thank you, Ria, for their presentation. Kind of follow up to Dr. Prime's question. Can you speak more specifically about your work and how your engagement has specifically with like multilingual families and all that?
Yeah. So this has been something that we're growing in as well. With limited capacity and funds, it's sometimes hard to do the type of engagement that we're hoping for. But a big way that we've been able to engage multilingual families and students is through partnerships. There are folks that like CASA. I'm going to give a huge shout out to CASA that they have translation services. They'll translate. They translated our survey for us, right? And they did it in Spanish and French. They'll connect you to a translator for a workshop that you're doing. And they'll really work with you to support how to best support multilingual students. But that doesn't just have to be CASA. There are plenty of organizations in your local context that are doing that work. And what I would say is really rely on them to and partner with them, right? How can you support them and how can they support you? And I think there's a lot of possibilities for partnerships. And I do like it better because then, there's a lot of work happening with AI and Google Translate and all that stuff, but grounding it in community and the translations and the context that is happening in your school system is super important. So I would really urge school systems to look at who is working with multilingual families in your county and partner with them, see how you can better make your materials and your engagement accessible to those families.
Thank you.
What other questions do we have? Well, Ria, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing your comprehensive approach and the tactics that you found to be really helpful. I know as a parent, I find your newsletters to be very informative and just appreciate the work that you all do to keep the communities informed in the many different ways that you go about doing so. So thank you. And at this time, we're going to turn it over to our next guest. We're so glad to welcome Tom Dwyer, founder of EdScale. And Tom kind of shook us up a little bit in one of his recent blogs on the Maryland Blueprint Reform. So Tom comes from a really long and varied experience leading reform and systemic change. And he highlighted some challenges that we've also been discussing as a committee, especially pertinent to our topic today, which is the need for clear and accessible communication for implementing the work. So we're grateful to learn from your perspective as both an implementation expert and a Maryland parent. We're hoping that your insights will give us a chance to reflect on how we can both build on what has been working thus far in all the different ways that it has been working across all of our 24 LEAs, and also with the spirit of continuous improvement, how we can get better at centering communication. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Tom, to share your findings, and then we'll open it up for discussion. And I think, Tom, I'm sharing your slides. Is that right?
That works for me.
Okay, great. So let me find the little slideshow button. All right, floor is yours.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for letting me join tonight. As Amy shared, I was invited to share a few reflections around Blueprint implementation that may pertain to this committee. But I want to first thank the committee. Know there's a principal on the line, a doctorate, I believe, a doctor at Morgan. You all have some pretty significant roles that you play every day in education, so thank you for that. Brief background. We can go to the next slide, Amy. I worked for former Governor O'Malley. He was mayor of Baltimore when I first moved to Maryland, support work in schools. Then I had the opportunity to work in Baltimore City Public Schools in the district office for 6 years. After that, I worked for a nonprofit in DC, supported states around the country implementing new standards, evaluation processes, et cetera, as part of Race to the Top. And then since 2016, I've focused on work in Maryland and Delaware and a little national, supporting schools, districts, and states in implementation. This is where the Blueprint is a significant reform, a significant change. And during times of change, implementation is even more important. And when going through change at this level, we should expect and frankly celebrate bumps and reversals, of course, because that's how we learn. This is a massive learning exercise. So just a little bit of background. My team and I believe in the brilliance of educators. We believe in the power of public education to change lives. And we support our partners in getting better results through implementation. You can go to the next slide, please. All right. So I think just one thing to note, sorry, I skipped. We do 4 things. Communication is not one of them. I just want to name that at the outset because we're talking about communication and engagement. I'm going to take a slightly different lens than Strong Schools Maryland. We support folks in strategic planning, progress planning, capacity building, and advising and operations. But we get into the weeds. So I don't build a strategic plan, almost never, that doesn't then evolve into us helping drive implementation, particularly through networks of practitioners. You can go to the next slide, Amy. So I'm going to talk about 2 things. 1, the challenge. 2, some opportunities. And 3, some questions for you to consider. You know about the historic scope and investment and a lot of momentum around enrollment, apprenticeships, and a number of community schools, and a number of other things. This is a massive investment. And so there's kind of 4 challenges that I've seen in the work. And as I've talked to others who are both employees, community members, consultants in this space, unfortunately, I couldn't find anybody that told me I was crazy. So the first one is that there are a lot of these are challenges. So speed and timing are not well managed. This is like drinking from a fire hose. You can see I think the title of a movie recently, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Sometimes it's felt like that, both to districts, to state folks, and to me from the outside. And as a parent, I've actually heard nothing, which is interesting. But the timelines, if you go on websites and all this stuff, it's hard to, if there's not clarity about what we're doing when we're doing it, and what metrics we need to report, and what a 6-year post-secondary plan should look like, feel like, it's really hard to communicate around it. And I think that's a core part of the issue, right? You have to have a handle on something, distill it down to the example Strong School just mentioned. And we're not there yet on some aspects of the blueprint. My county's website that I just wanted to look at has reports up from 2021 from state, and then they have things up a bit more recently. And then I also was listening and went back to the updates I get from my children's school, and there's kind of a mention of the blueprint. So I think the question is are we really clear on who needs to know what? Have we differentiated our audiences, thought about how we reach them? I just don't think that evidence is making it out into the field yet. Second, this one that's been in papers, there's been a lot of more recently joint meetings between MSDE and AIB, but there continues to be, in my opinion, some room to fill around the roles, around the understanding. And there was a RACI table that was shared at the end of the summer that helped clarify some of this work. That was a good move, in the right direction. But if you think about, in my work, when you think about separating guidance, support, accountability, it's really hard because you need the content expert who's able to give guidance around student social emotional learning practices, who's able to give feedback, observe and give feedback on those practices, and then as a result is also able to say like, hey, just missed the bar on that one. And to separate them, I know what was done for purpose. I think it's just introduced some really significant challenges, and we need to accelerate that marriage, so to speak, to get there. Third, I'm one of those parents who needs the 5 or 10 minute update because I work in education is my job. I don't, my wife is in charge of my son's school stuff because of that. Otherwise I get too involved. So I need the 5 or 10 minute update as a parent. and I don't have time to read a 150-page implementation report. And so I don't think that, again, the distillation isn't happening. It's unclear what status looks like, or when, in fact, is it because we shouldn't know the status yet, which is absolutely the case in a lot of things, or is it that we don't know the status yet, or it's there, but I haven't found it, right? And it's hard. It takes a lot of work to do that, even with ChatGPT, frankly. And this is actually the only thing I really care about. Promising practices are not coming up. It doesn't feel like we're collectively moving the work. And that's the only reason I needed to write something, or just get it out of my head. But if we need to share promising practices, we need to be incredibly transparent, or we're falling short. And I have not done that. And I political climate we're in that's contributing, I just haven't seen it. And so I'm fearful that we're not learning fast enough. And the last one is like the what is it, trickle down economics, right? Sometimes people believe it works, some don't. The connected can with some string, right? Sometimes I feel like I'm trying to live through the can and it doesn't make it through. But in my experience, at least Baltimore City, who do teachers listen to? Who do parents listen to? It's to be their peers. And not going to my district's website to learn about what Blueprint means for my kid. I need to hear it from my school, because that's who I trust. That's who I know. That's where my relationship is. And that's where I engage for the most part. Whether it's a bus or dropping off. So I think got to move that locus of communication to a different spot and think about the audience differently. All right, so that's the negative stuff. Let's think about where are the opportunities on the next slide. These shouldn't surprise you based on what I just said, but continued coordination and role clarity. And that last one, transparent, and I heard Strong Schools, same thing, right? Transparency, shared implementation progress. Name where we fell down, should still get funding. Name what we learned, should still get funding, right? And so it's hard to learn when there are really significant consequences of saying you're not meeting standard, or potential consequences. Maybe that's one of the issues. Second, distill the reports. Who are the top 3 districts in the state on X? And what can we learn from them? I can't find it. We should have that. White papers, whatever it might be, however it might come. Is it coming? Is it not? I don't know. I can't get excited about it because I don't know when it's coming. Right. So I think it's coming over time. I hope. I haven't seen ENF talk to some of those providers that are in that space. All right. Third, communication. I think I already spoke to this enough. Fourth, I get this right. So the ecosystem. Who's the steward of implementation ecosystem? The governor, the state legislature? It still seems murky. I guess that everything worth implementing usually is at the beginning, so we should expect that. I just hope we get to a very different place. In the UK, when Tony Blair was Prime Minister, he established a delivery unit. They were tasked with ensuring that the government met their goals across everything from trains running on time to literacy and numeracy, which is what we call math and reading. Maybe Maryland needs something like this, I don't know, but to ensure that everyone is playing well together. And most importantly, the reforms are having positive impacts on students intended. Honestly, I know there are a ton of things I don't know about. I'm not claiming to be an expert on the program. That would require me to probably have 2 full-time jobs. But I think the overall point is that it should be easier to know. So we can go to the next slide, please. And I want to share an example of just what could this look like. And I apologize if it looks small on your screen. You'll have to adjust it. So this is fictitious. It's not real. It's not real. Not real. Made it up. Completely made up. Although some of the rationale is grounded in my understanding of open time. So note that there in the first column there are 6 rating areas, from policy, guidance, support and capacity, accountability, evidence of progress, and overall, what does that mean? This is saying just a snapshot in time, how are we doing on this example of career coaches statewide, right? That's really the pillar 3 item that is most activated, and hence we're in year 2.5. The second thing you'll note are the colors, the little circles with the abbreviations, and then you'll see the ratings key on the left-hand side. It's a 4-point Likert scale. Green means great, on track, but we still have things to probably work on. But if we do nothing else, we think we'll achieve our goal. Red means, doesn't mean you're fired. It doesn't mean we should, stop working. It means we've got something to do something quickly. We need to learn quickly. We need to adapt quickly. We need to invest and adjust resources in that space. All right? This is all about learning. And then there's the evidence to the right of the colors that just gives a little bit of a flavor of why that rating. All right, so without knowing anything else and probably without being able to read that rationale, I have a question for you. Where is the career coach effort strong? This is like a call and response. Where is it strong?
You're posing this as a question to the group?
Yeah, yes, please. I just
Oh, Tom, I'm probably the best suited to answer this in rapid fire succession because I do work with this program and most of our advisory committee members are not as involved in it. So I can just give you a couple great quick examples.
Well, sorry, you could. I'm not even asking the complex question. I'm literally just saying based on the ratings and what's on the board, without knowing anything, where are we doing well? So if you look at the ratings,
you mean in the fictitious rating?
In the fictitious
reality in Maryland. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
In a made-up scenario. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'll let the group answer that then, because I'm able to speak to what's happening.
I'll demonstrate the answer to this question, then I'll ask you too. So policy. Yeah, who said policy? I heard policy.
Yeah, policy.
Yeah, policy, right? It's amber, green, or yellow, mixed. What does that say? Aspects require some substantial attention. Some things are going really well. All right, second question. Where are we weak? Where are we the most weakest in this fictitious example?
It's evidence of progress.
Thank you, Principal Brown. All right. Evidence of progress. And notice I can't read the rationale, right? So very quickly, you can understand it. So what's the overall status? That's a trick question. That's a question mark because I actually couldn't figure it out for myself. And that's again to come back to this point of I want to learn from others, and it's really hard to do that right now. All right, so I think something like this, I don't care. I'm agnostic about, but some way to see, some way to learn, somewhere to see, understand where bright spots are in the state. In quick session, not in an extensive evaluation, because that serves a very different purpose. And that's not kind of the lens I bring to things. So in conclusion, Dr. Wright, in episode 8 of my podcast, I was very lucky to get on my podcast. She referenced this book called Managing Transitions, Making the Most of Change. It's from maybe 15, 20 years ago. I hadn't read it, which I was amazed by. But the book uses an analogy of a large marathon. I read it now, where the start is staggered with the front runners going out first. And then about 15 minutes later, in the back, you cross the line, right? You just cross the start line. So if you think big marathon like Boston, New York, what's the one in DC? Anyway, big marathons, people, you can only fit on a road, essentially. And so everyone starts in a line. And the thing is that front of the pack, by the time I would start, is probably halfway through. Those elite runners are already halfway through the race. And the blueprint at that moment, those front runners are out, the policy and funding. The middle of the pack, about a year in, the early district implementers, particular initiatives, and many folks are just about to start just about to cross the start line. The rest of the district implements, along with most leaders and most teachers. I think it's easy. It is for me, at least. It's easy for the front runners to forget many implementers are just getting to the starting gate, are just starting to understand what is blueprint for me in my school. And I think this is a factor contributing to some of the challenges that we're seeing right now. All right, we can go to the next slide. I'm going to frame 3 questions and then turn it back to you all. There's a lot of questions, but I think 3 to consider, particularly in light of the communications focus. It's ultimately about making it easy for everyone to engage and support the vision of the blueprint, and to give feedback on implementation without having to attend lots of evening meetings and YouTube recordings that aren't night committee, which is my favorite YouTube. 3 questions: clarity and roles. Is there more opportunity to streamline communication, transparency, role building, provide that guidance, support, and accountability that districts and schools need? Accessibility. How do we find the information? Where is the transparency in this implementation? And you have to wait another year to get a report, right? I mean, it's that looks across. And then feedback loops. How can implementers and families be systemically captured? So I'll echo a lot of the comments from Strong Schools. Amy, I don't know if you want to. I'll let you decide what we want to do next, but that was all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. We appreciate your perspective. We're actually going to turn it to Principal Brown. We could think of no one better to really help ground the reality of what it means to communicate with parents and families, and taking all of this information and all of these different timelines and distilling that into what parents and families would need to keep pace. So at this time, Principal Brown, the floor is yours to lead the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I get started, I want to say thank you to Tom and Ria, because it was a lot of useful information in both of your presentations that honestly I probably could spend the next hour on, just talking to some of those things, resources, some of the problems, and how we can actually be solution driven as we continue to move forward with this implementation process. So I appreciate that. Before I get started, I did want to kick it over to Arshia. She did want to talk about, I believe, some of the AIB communication tools. So I'll give her a chance to do that, and then I'm going to try to lead all of us in a brief discussion.
Thanks so much, Principal Brown. Yes, just to build on kind of all of the conversations happening, and talk a little bit about the AIB current communication priorities, how these can also be resources for LEAs, families, students, and for all of you to kind of give us some feedback as well and think about these things as you go into your discussion. So just to start off, highlighting some of our high-level priorities on this slide. Some of these do mirror some of the work that Ria and Strong Schools is doing. Our AIB updates are recap newsletters after each AIB meeting. We do understand, I think Tom mentioned this, and a few people may have mentioned this, that not everyone can tune into a 4-hour meeting once a month and may not have time to watch it, but we try and send out these AIB updates to our newsletter that recaps what happens in the meetings. We will also be shifting to include a newsletter each month, which also highlights the progress happening and best practices. So we are thinking about how to make this information digestible, how to share the progress that is happening. And as Rachel has mentioned, we are the AIB. One of the things that we are tasked with is interagency collaboration, but also sharing with the public and collaboration around the practices, the innovation that is happening. So our AIB updates is a big way of trying to share that beyond just the people who can attend the meetings or the people directly involved in this work. Website redesign I'm going to get to, but that is something that is very imminent. We are going to be launching our new website in the next week or two. We are currently in accessibility testing, and the goal of our new website is really to make this information more accessible. Ria spoke to this as well, but having both a place where people can learn more about the blueprint, but also knowing our audience, that people come in from different experiences, expertise, background, knowledge. We really wanted to have a website that is more interactive and provides different entry points. So I'll be talking a little bit about that. And then progress highlights. We currently have statewide progress highlight one-pagers. We also have a few versions that are a little bit longer than one-pagers that are on our website. But definitely hear that we need to know what is happening, what the work is doing, what the investment is resulting in. So we have progress highlights right now that are organized on the state level, and we are working on LEA-specific progress highlights soon. Over the next few months, those will be released, and that will hopefully be able to be shared by LEAs. We've been getting input from Blueprint coordinators on that as well. And that really is hopefully going to be a tool for families, students, schools to really understand what impact Blueprint implementation is having in their specific district. Social media, engaging with partners, as well as reposting Blueprint in action, as well as posting different initiatives that are happening. Accessibility, this is something that is a focus of ours. So making sure that our materials are available in different languages. Our web pages can all be translated into different languages, but we are working on translation guidance and materials for our documents to be able to be translated into different languages as well. And then our overall community strategy development and review. I'm going to talk about this a little bit, but we also really want to engage in a cycle of continuous improvement and feedback, as has been mentioned by a lot of the guests tonight. So definitely making sure that we're talking to our partners, our interest holders, hearing what is needed, and then adjusting. I think Ria said that no one's going to get it perfect, but trying to make sure that we're adjusting and being responsive. So I'm going to just quickly talk about our website redesign, since I do think that this can be a really great tool to get more engagement and understanding of the blueprint. Right now, our website is mostly just a place where our information lives, but isn't super interactive. There's a lot of reports on there and things and information that is helpful, but you kind of have to know where it is to find it. So we are trying to improve the navigation of our website, as well as the organization, editing our content to make sure that it is accessible, plain language, and then also creating these pillar pages, which have the different components of the pillars, what's happening within the pillars, resources. And then by December 1st, we will be posting our data dashboards. Those we will be building on over time, but we will be having data available in the next few months, both by state as well as by district, on different metrics and outcome measures that are related to the blueprint. And I am just going to show you all a little preview. I know we want time for discussion. So these are just some snapshots from our new website, which I said will be launching in the next week or two. So making it cleaner overall, and then also making it a little bit more accessible in terms of knowing how to get to different information. We also will be having drop-down menus. So right now there aren't any drop-down menus on our website. So you kind of have to know where things are to find resources. So this is just an example of one. And then we have our pillar pages. And like I mentioned, every web page is translatable. And then we have our different pillar components. Within here, we have different resources that are related to the components. So really trying to not just put out what these things are, but also talk about what the work is, how it's getting done, what the progress is as well. And then this was actually something Rachel had talked about with LEA implementation plans earlier. We are moving towards a way where you understand what is in every submission, and you can also access every submission for a district all in one kind of table here. So we are just trying to make sure that even though there is a lot of information, and in our quest of being very transparent, that means there's a lot of stuff we are posting. We are making sure that we're trying to organize it in a way that can be accessed by people, no matter how much you know about the blueprint, or if you're just starting, or if you're really focused on one area of it. So website is coming. As I mentioned, we are really just wanting to engage in continuous improvement, and we really do appreciate feedback. I know I've gotten feedback from some of you on this call before about different things that would be helpful. And there's a few different ways to give feedback. We do annual revisions to our Blueprint Comprehensive Plan, which we showed some parts of earlier. And all of you were involved in the public input session earlier this year. There are different forms on our website. You could do public comment at our meetings, and also you can reach out to me as well for any specific ideas or questions. Thank you so much. I will hand it back to Principal Brown to get that discussion going.
Thank you, Arcia. I appreciate all of your information. The website is exciting. So people get excited about websites, but it looks great. So I can't wait to see it once it's fully out there. So really quickly, again, this isn't a quiz for everybody. I know there's been a lot of information that we've been taking in from the presentations and everything else, but I want to kind of bring that kind of full circle before we bring things to a close. And basically, it's really about, again, the implementation process and how that is having an impact on our families. And just as an organization, AIB, we want to kind of get things as right as we can and help out as much as possible to make sure that our families and our LEAs have the tools necessary to do all the work that's been going on around the state. So there's just a couple targeted questions that I wanted to kind of put out there to the group. I know this group is usually quiet, but I want to make sure that we are actually immersed in the kind of discussions. So there are no wrong ways to kind of jump in. But one of the things I wanted to bring up was, what would one challenge our families, or what's a challenge that our families hear about this fall, and what we need to put in plain language for our parents when it comes to just some of the challenges that the blueprint in this implementation process may come to bear. For example, I know for myself, just being a principal at a school is very challenging. And I think one thing that just myself as a principal, not only being a parent, wants to hear is give it to me as plain as you can as far as whatever the challenges is, especially as it directly affects children. And so if we're talking about the blueprint, and I know some LEAs have struggled with just personnel and making sure that there are teachers in positions that are needed, and access to this blueprint and everything else, and just being aligned. A lot of that, and a lot of LEAs have struggled with that across the state, and it's had a direct impact on staff morale, teaching and learning, and the whole 9 yards. But it's not all the time that information has been given out to families and communities, I think, in a plain way that everybody can kind of understand this is what we're going through, and not to put the blame on the blueprint on anyone, but I think families would appreciate just the plain language of what's going out and not trying to sugarcoat it for families. I think that's one thing that was even in one of the presentations earlier from Rhea, like that plain information is something that will work for our families. So as you think about that, are there any challenges that you feel should be kind of put out in plain language for our families that, maybe we're already seeing LEAs do, or you're thinking that should be done?
So I'll start. So this is Heather Clayball, and I'm the Associate Superintendent of Fiscal Services for Frederick County Public Schools. And I think some of the plain language that we've been struggling with and will continue to work on is the understanding of some of the funding changes that have happened and how those funding changes may affect your school depending upon the makeup of your student body. You know, and which is the goal, one of the goals in regards to funding for the blueprint. And we're starting to see that in some schools there will be changes that will need to be implemented. And you know, it's not happening quickly, but it will be happening over the next several fiscal years to ensure that we're doing that. And I think a lot of our families are used to the access that every school has to certain things, and it may have to shift. And I think that is going to be a change for our families. But I also think that one of the other things we're facing is engaging those families to have the time to listen, and given all of the other things that everyone has going on in their typical day has really been a struggle. And while we have a robust communication strategy in Frederick County in everything that we do, it never seems to be quite as robust as we'd like it to be. And you know, in the midst of all the text, email messages, and what have you, how do you rise to the top has also been the struggle, not just within the changes and the things we've been plainly explaining.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heather. And that kind of, leads into the next, question is, what is that visual impact that our families will see? And you talked about it a little bit yourself right there, is some of the things are going to look different, for our schools, for the communities in which that we serve. And my biggest question is, and you talked about it a little bit, like, what are you guys trying to do? Like, you're trying to do something in order to kind of stay out in front of that, right? My question to the entire group is, in helping Heather out, is like, what are we doing about that? We know what that visual impact for our families is and a lot of our LEAs. But the question is, like, what are we doing about that that can be helpful? Some of the presentations, again, this is not a quiz, but you listen to some of the presentations, like some of these things were kind of brought up. So what are some of the things that we can do about it, instead of kind of just, holding our hands up and shrugging our shoulders? I know there's actionable things that we can probably put in place.
Michael, I would love to give a shout out to the Pillar 5 committee, because when I think about like the fiscal piece, I think the session that you all ran about the fiscal piece, the questions you asked, the framing that you asked to be provided, that was one of the first times it really got put out there for everybody to even begin understanding it. And I suspect this will tie to a closing topic tonight about the topics for this year. But as the committee thinks about all the things they heard today, I think this builds on your strategy for helping the AIB also think about how to get these right. So like Heather, I'm thinking, we need to bring minimum school funding back to the conversation this year for an update and a deeper dive. And so I think you guys are a part of the AIB strategy to help surface this, and you've done a phenomenal job.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and like I said, I know, we're getting ready to bring this conversation to a close, but I do also want to mention, lastly, about just the overall jargon and things like that are being utilized by a lot of LEAs. We mentioned it earlier tonight as well. Families want to know what's real, and a lot of times they don't understand the educational jargon that's kind of being put out there to explain the impact of the implementation of this blueprint legislation. And I think some of those communications that are put out there whether it be, the baseline information, those one-page documents or things that you can put online to make things very simple. I've seen that in a lot of LEAs that it's more of like a visual chart, not as much jargon, but it's kind of easy for people to kind of understand and kind of follow. The progress snapshots that are put online, and we've seen some of those examples tonight that make it very easy again for people to understand, like, where is this going? How is it going to impact me as a parent? I think is also very impactful. So I think all those things come together, or like, we know it's a work in progress, but I think we're all, making some progress in that regard. Dr. Prime, you had your hand up.
Thank you. One of the biggest stories out there in the public domain, it has to do with teacher shortages. And parents and the public hear much about that. And I am just wondering if that is one area where, and surely if indeed it is as is publicized, that has the potential to undermine the best efforts of the AIB, of the blueprint. And so I'm just wondering if that is an area where there needs to be clear and open communication and about what schools and LEAs are doing to address that issue.
Thank you, Dr. Prime. I am in agreement with you. That is a topic that I think everybody in the state and a lot of LEAs I've heard from are very concerned about that. But those are kind of intrinsic thoughts that aren't always expressed to the masses in a way in which, again, is not going to create panic, but be an area in which that you can share information, and also, which is also a part of this conversation, is creating a channel for feedback, right? LEA is creating that opportunity for feedback, which is not always a bad thing, but it's how you can utilize that feedback. Because again, our communities are very strong in Maryland. They're very opinionated, but they also are very solution driven as well. So there may be some things that come from the community in feedback that you can actually utilize specifically in the LEAs. So yeah, I think that's very, very important. So I appreciate everybody opportunity. This is a quick, like I said, discussion. Again, this could go on for a very, very long time, but I think this night was very, very impactful. And again, I appreciate all our presenters and all of you taking part in this discussion. So I appreciate that. Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you for closing comments. I know it's 7:29, so we are up against it.
We are up against time, so I'm actually going to ask for advice from the group about how you want to handle this part. Annually at our September meeting, we do try to have actually, let me rephrase that. Annually, at a meeting of the advisory committee, we ask each advisory committee to have a conversation just about logistics of the advisory committee. It doesn't have to be today, and clearly we are out of time for today. So I'm going to suggest that we shift some of this to the October agenda, but I'm going to give you some things to think about. There are 3 topics that we ask every advisory committee to discuss each year as they reconvene after the summer break or as the new school year is kicking off. The first one is about the day and time of the meeting. And so we have 2 new student members this year who will be hopefully able to join us in the October meeting. And we need to check with them as well as with all of you to see if your world's changed or if this is still the best day and time to meet. We can do that through emails and doodle polls and however you want, or a conversation here in October, as long as the October meeting can be well attended. We we do want to make sure that we set up a date that would work in October. The second piece after day and time is leadership. Amy and Mr. Liu have done a phenomenal job in the inaugural year of the Pillar 5 Advisory Committee. There is no requirement to shift leadership at all in the AIB. We just ask that annually we have a conversation to see if other folks are interested in serving in the role. I did ask Amy and Javon's to think about sharing. It's not just like show up 5 minutes before the meeting. There's a lot of legwork that happens behind the scenes that they can tell you about what it takes to keep these meetings running. But we definitely want to open the conversation, and I think we'll do it in October, if other folks are interested in any roles on the advisory committee, and we're even willing to consider extra roles or roles that don't currently exist. The AIB does ask that each advisory committee has a chair and a co-chair, and at the August training, we shared what some of the roles of those folks are. One of our other committees has a secretary. There's just different roles on different committees. So you're not limited to the committee roles that you're currently seeing. And then finally, we do like to kind of get a sense of where we're going for the year. What are the topics you want to dig into that are timely and pertinent for 2025? And in that conversation, we typically try to get grounded in the pillar again. What are all the big components of Pillar 5? And what's happening this year that may be of interest? It's also a good time for me to be able to compile kind of some things of interest that when reports are going to be turned in. For example, on October 15th, we'll be receiving the fiscal reports for career counseling from across the state. On July 1, we did receive the annual reports for career counseling. So if career counseling is a topic that Pillar 5 would like to look at from the lens of the recent reports that have been submitted, we could do that. There are other things that we can put on your awareness of what's coming up this year to include how progress monitoring looks and what's happening in that realm. And then also what's anticipated, anything with legislation, which you went through the process with us about the BCP updates, which some of the things were marked as that would be a legislative change. So what I would ask, and I'll turn it over to Amy and Javon's after this, is that you think about how you want to structure the October meeting, if that's just a component of the October meeting, to set the agenda for the year, to determine which months you want to meet. As a reminder, the AIB does ask that the committee meets once quarterly. So 4 meetings a year. You guys have been doing about monthly, give or take, and that's up for conversation as well. So those are some of the key points that we wanted to put on the radar for today. But with that, I'll pass it back and figure out how we want to move forward with those.
Yeah, no, thank you, Rachel. Oh, yeah, for sure. At the October meeting, we can talk about a lot of all that stuff. Everything you mentioned. Definitely can be different components within the October meeting. But would love to get people's thoughts on what our ideal topic would be for October for the main portion of the meeting. Any suggestions you can put in the chat, come off of mute. We'd love to hear them.
Mr. Liu, did we exhaust the list identified last year? Do you know?
Can't recall off the top of my head at this moment.
Okay. We can certainly pull that back out. And I would say that some of those other things, one of our other advisory committees has already met to talk about planning the year. And then we have Pillar 3 coming up next week. It's taken about 45 minutes to an hour. So it can take some time. So we might want to think about a more bite-sized piece. Like tonight was a very meaty discussion. So we might want to think about something smaller. I could propose, I didn't hear anybody jumping. I did not give you proper wait time. So if somebody has an idea, do please jump in, but I can tell you things that are currently happening. The LEAs are now beginning to go through their progress monitoring conferences. You heard Emma came and shared with you what that would look like. We've had one LEA complete that process. They lived. Spoiler alert, it was great. It was really a great meeting. And not only that, it's tied to today's idea of continuous improvement. We've been getting feedback from them already of how do we make this better? Did this accomplish what we wanted? And so we could do a quick update on that. We have about 1 to 2 a week from now, and some weeks 6, until October, end of October. So progress monitoring is a topic if you'd like to hear more about that. But broadly, there's a lot of things happening. We're about to enter into the fall season where we start showing at every meeting each LEA's progress towards the funds release of funds tracker. So the submission of career ladders, the submission of their career counseling MOU. There's a bunch of things that get tied into that. So those are a couple of things that are kind of more Pillar 5 related, thinking about accountability and monitoring of Blueprint.
That sounds good to me if that's okay with everyone. And then we'll ensure that there's ample time at the next meeting to talk about all the other things you mentioned. Cool.
Yes. I would just put it to the group real quick. Are there any points of what I said that you're really interested in? Like, do you feel like you already heard more about progress monitoring and you know what that is from the prior discussions of what it would be like? Or are there any particular questions that you are curious about the process?
I think it would be helpful about the release of funds, because I don't think people fully understand the different what could be a significant impact to a budget if the funds aren't released, if you're not meeting this different progress or the different items within the tracker. So I think it would be helpful to show the tracker and see that.
Absolutely. And then we can also explain, which you know intimately, but it's release of Blueprint funds. So what does that mean compared to all funds? Like, we can dig into that clarification as well. So yeah, we already have a tracker ready to go, and we can walk you through what that will look like for this year. So we'll look forward to that topic, as well as thinking about topics of interest for the rest of the year.
Great. Sounds good. So I believe that's the rest of the evening. Sorry we are about 8 minutes over, but thank you again so much, everyone, for being here tonight. Hope you guys have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.